My name is Kyle, and I'll never forget the summer I turned 11. That was the year my parents dropped me off at my Uncle Jack's house for 2 weeks while they went on some grown-up vacation they didn't want me around for. Jack lived alone on the outskirts of a small, dying town in Oregon. His place sat on a hill overlooking thick woods, and what caught my attention immediately, the rusted iron gates of a long-abandoned zoo. Used to work there, Jack said, lighting a cigarette as we stood on the porch that first evening. Back in the day, that place was full of kids and animals and noise. Now it's just ghosts and raccoons. I laughed, nervously. He didn't. Uncle Jack wasn't the warmest man. He wore the same faded denim shirt every day, had a permanent scowl etched into his face, and carried himself like someone who knew more than he let on. The house smelled like tobacco and pine cleaner, and the guest room I stayed in had no curtains, just blinds that clattered every time the wind shifted. The first night, I couldn't sleep, not just because of the strange bat or the unfamiliar forest sounds, but because I was sure I heard something else. A low, almost mournful groan carried faintly on the breeze from the direction of the zoo. The next morning, over breakfast, I asked him about it. "You ever hear stuff from down there?" I asked, stabbing at the rubbery eggs he'd made. Jack didn't look up. "Sound carries in these woods. Could be anything." But it sounded like, I don't know, like an animal, a big. That made him glance up. His eyes were sharp and gray. "I told you, goats and raccoons." He wouldn't say more. But that same day, when he went out back to chop firewood, I snuck out and headed toward the zoo. It wasn't hard to find, down an overgrown trail, past the half-collapsed fence and through a break in the chain link that surrounded the grounds. The main gate still stood, rusted and half-hinged, with faded lettering overhead that once read, "Crescent Hollow Zoological Gardens." Now ivy covered half the sign, and what was visible just said, "C.H. Zoo." Inside, the place was a graveyard of cages and shattered glass. Mat stands were toppled and benches were rotting. An old gift shop stood with its door half open, filled with moldy plush toys and broken display racks. But the air was thick with something else, like memory or maybe dread. I wondered deeper. There were old animal enclosures, most of them empty concrete pits or rusted bars. The signs had faded, but I could still make out words like giraffe and bears. Everything was silent until I reached what looked like the old reptile house. It was one of the few buildings still mostly intact. The doors were chained shut, but one of the rear windows had been shattered long ago. I climbed in. The inside reeked of damp woods and something sharper, chemicals or rot. The things were all empty, glass smeared with grime and handprints. Some looked like they had shattered from the inside. I walked slowly, almost reverently, not sure why I felt like whispering or holding my breath. Then I found it. One room in the back had walls covered in yellowed newspaper clippings. Some were pinned up, some taped. All of them were about the zoo, a fire in 1997, a missing animal, protests, funding scandals. But what caught my attention were the photos, blurry shots of strange silhouettes. Animals that didn't match any description. A six-legged thing behind MASH, something but two heads. One clipping's headline read, "Griffin Hollow's secret exhibit shut down after a child's disappearance." I froze. That night, I didn't sleep again. I didn't say anything to Uncle Jack, but he must have seen something in my face because he sat down across from me after dinner, lit another cigarette, and said, "You went down there, didn't you?" I nodded. He looked tired. "Figures. You always were curious like your dad." "What was the secret exhibit?" I asked. He didn't answer for a long time. Then finally, with a sigh, he said, "They called it the Hollow Menagerie. Wasn't on any maps. Only VIP solid. Rich people. Government types. Not all the animals there came from the wild. Some of them were made. I mean, they were experiments. Hybrids. Spliced genes. Things no one should have been messing with. But the money was good, and the people funding it didn't care about ethics, just result." I stared at him. He leaned forward, voice low. "I was just a groundskeeper. Didn't know what they were doing at first. Then I started seeing them. Things in the shadows. Screams at night. People leaving in a rush. Then one day, a little girl went missing." I swallowed. "What happened?" "They said she wandered off, but I knew better. I quit the job the next Saturday. The zoo closed a year later. Official story was financial collapse. Truth is, they lost control of something. My throat was dry, and it's still in there." He looked out the window toward the tree line. "Some of them maybe. Some of them never left. Others, I don't think they were ever meant to stay in cages." There was a silence. Then he said, almost to himself, "I should have burned that place to the ground." 2 nights later, the howling started. It wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a coyote. It wasn't a bear. I don't know what it was, but it shook the windows. It made my skin crawl. It made the dishes in the kitchen rattle in her cabinets. Jack grabbed his gun. "Stay inside," he said. "Lock the doors. Don't open them. Not for me. Not for anyone. Understand?" I nodded. He left. That was the last time I saw Uncle Jack alive. When morning came, he hadn't returned. I waited hours. Then I broke the rule. It went out. I followed the trail down to the zoo. The gates were wide open. The air was heavy, silent, too silent. And inside the reptile house, I found his gun. Split clean in two, like someone had twisted it apart. And next to it, something else. A journal. Old, leather-bound, stained with sweat and dried blood. Inside, his handwriting. Pages and pages of what he'd seen, what he knew, what they'd done. And warnings. The black pit was still open. He read something in the dark. It grew. It thinks. It remembers. Another light said, they were never meant to live, but they learned how to survive. I closed the book and ran, but I never forgot. Never. And now, as an adult, I've come back because last month my developer bought the land, plans to reopen it as a wildlife sanctuary. They have no idea what's buried beneath the cages, but I do, and I'm here to make sure it stays buried, even if I have to burn the whole place to ash.